September 14, 2025. The Caribbean, before dawn. At 5:22 a.m., silence broke with a scream. 7 supersonic missiles rose from the Venezuelan coast. Each one flew at nearly 2,000 miles per hour. Each one carried a warhead heavy enough to tear through a ship. They were aimed at an American cargo vessel and the destroyer escort beside it. This was not a skirmish. It was a statement. 15 miles off Puerto Cabello, one of the busiest shipping corridors in the Western Hemisphere, more than 400 vessels pass every week. Nearly $2.3 billion in goods move through this lane every 7 days. Oil, medicine, machinery, entire supply chains depend on these waters. The MV Liberty Star was loaded and steaming east. 60,000 tons dead weight, 28 crew going about their jobs, $120 million in cargo stacked in her holds. Her escort was the USS Arleigh Burke, a guided missile destroyer with 300 sailors aboard and the most advanced radar system at sea. Caracas had not acted at random. Weeks earlier, strict tariffs and a show of force signaled a push to control international waters. Bastion P coastal batteries were deployed. The P-800 Onyx missile is 28 feet long, travels at Mach 2.6, and carries a warhead that can shred a hull. On the Arleigh Burke, analysts had watched satellite imagery for unusual movement. Launchers were spotted near storage yards. Troop convoys moved under cover of night. Tension rose, measured in crews on alert in long, silent hours of waiting. Then the radar lights flared. 7 red blips cut across the screen. The Combat Information Center froze for 1 heartbeat, then erupted. Alarms, commands, men racing to stations. Multiple inbound, the weapons officer reported. SM-6 interceptors prepared to fire. Phalanx guns spun to life. The ship's shield was tested in seconds. Before the sky could settle, explosions blossomed above the sea. 5 missiles broke apart. 1 plunged into the water. Another detonated early, spraying debris. The Liberty Star shook. Containers slid. Nearby merchant captains sent frantic SOS calls. The shield held, but the attack did not end with intercepts. Washington moved fast. Signals passed through encrypted channels. Plans were drawn. The response would not be defensive for long. All right, quick pause. If you want tight, fact-driven breakdowns like this, hit like and subscribe now so you do not miss the next update. Appreciate the support. Now let's get back to the video. Inside the USS Arleigh Burke, the Combat Information Center was chaos under control. Red lights flashed. The radar screen filled with streaks, each representing a missile moving at nearly 3 times the speed of sound. The weapons officer's voice cut through the noise. Multiple inbound, confirmed hostile. Every sailor knew the math. At Mach 2.6, the missiles would close the distance in under 5 minutes. That meant less than 300 seconds to detect, track, and destroy. Training was one thing. Facing 7 supersonic warheads in real time was another. Engage, came the order. The Arleigh Burke's Aegis system activated instantly. Vertical launch cells opened with a hiss, and the first SM-6 interceptors leapt skyward. Their contrails sliced the morning air, racing to meet the incoming threat. Meanwhile, the ship's Phalanx CYWS guns spun to life, barrels glowing red as they reached thousands of rounds per minute. Then the Caribbean sky became a battlefield. Explosions crackled above the waves as interceptors met missiles head-on. 5 Onyx warheads shattered in fireballs, raining debris into the sea. Another failed mid-flight, plunging into the ocean with a thunderous splash that tossed fishing boats like toys. A final missile detonated prematurely, its fragments scattering harmlessly into the water. The Liberty Star still shook from the shockwave. Steel containers toppled across her deck, and crewmen clung to safety lines as alarms blared. Panic spread across the shipping lane. Captains of nearby merchant ships screamed into radios, transmitting frantic SOS calls. 20 ships veered off course, their silhouettes scattering like startled birds across the horizon. For those civilians, it felt like the end of the world. But the destroyer had done its job. The shield held. The cargo ship survived. Now Washington's next move would decide if this clash ended at defense or escalated into all-out retaliation. The shield had held, but Washington knew defense was only half the battle. Within minutes of the attack, Encrypted orders flashed across the Navy's communication networks. The directive was sharp and simple: retaliate, but keep the shipping lanes open. Intelligence was already flowing in. A P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft sweeping the Caribbean confirmed the launch site. Heat signatures marked the coastline near Puerto Cabello. And more critically, the sensors identified a far larger target: Venezuela's main naval shipyard. Stretching nearly 2 million square feet, the Puerto Cabello yard was the backbone of Venezuela's maritime strength. It held missile storage depots, dry docks, assembly hangars, and radar facilities. More than 850 workers and technicians manned the site daily. It wasn't just infrastructure, it was the nerve center of their coastal defense. Destroying it would cripple Venezuela's strike capability for years. But missing or striking civilians could ignite a wider crisis. Precision was everything. The plan formed quickly. 3 FA-18E Super Hornets would launch from a carrier group south of Aruba. Each jet carried 2 AGM-158LR ASM missiles, designed to punch through hardened targets from more than 300 nautical miles away. From the sea, the USS Arleigh Burke would join the strike, loading 5 Tomahawk cruise missiles into its vertical launch tubes. In total, 11 missiles worth nearly $60 million would be unleashed, a calculated cost. Better to sacrifice millions in hardware than risk even one American life. Sailors aboard the destroyer knew the equation well. The Liberty Star had survived, but Caracas had drawn first blood in international waters. Now the answer had to be decisive, measured in steel and fire. At 6:05 a.m., the order came through. Strike package approved. Jets roared into the sky. Vertical launch tubes hissed open. 11 weapons locked on target. The counterattack had begun. At 6:05 a.m., 11 missiles roared toward Puerto Cabello. 6 LRASMS from the fighters. 5 Tomahawks from the Arleigh Burke. A single coordinated wave. Precision built into every flight path. Targets pre-selected, coordinates locked, collateral minimized. The first explosions arrived like thunder. Missile storage bunkers vaporized. Roofs collapsed in columns of flame. Hangars that once sheltered assembly lines folded inward. Electrical substations blew, plunging cranes and control towers into darkness. MQ-9 drone feeds recorded it all. Fire raced across yards stacked with missile tubes, each tube worth millions. Heat melted steel. Concrete cracked. Machinery used in final assembly and testing was gone in minutes. 7 giant cranes were damaged beyond repair. Dry docks buckled from the blast shock. In less than 10 minutes, approximately 70% of the shipyard's production capacity was erased. Damage estimates flowed to command centers. Infrastructure losses between $350 and $450 million. Replacement would take years, not months. Critical tooling and precision benches were destroyed. Stocks of missile tubes were reduced to molten scrap. Venezuela's ability to rearm and repair coastal batteries had been sharply diminished. Then came the human cost. Despite warnings and alerts to nearby vessels, many workers remained on site. Local rosters and imagery later showed roughly 850 personnel around the major facilities. Initial casualty reports put total casualties at about 120. 32 confirmed dead. 88 wounded rushed to coastal hospitals. Families woke to sirens and smoke on the horizon. Rescue crews pulled survivors from collapsed hangars. Hospitals overflowed. For neighborhoods downwind, the sky smelled of burning metal and fuel. Militarily, the strike had immediate effect. 2 bastion clusters were rendered inoperable. The main coastal fire control radar was disabled. Command centers lost communications for hours. Venezuela's coastal strike capability was cut by roughly half in one operation. On the American side, no combat deaths were reported. Costs were measured in hardware and strategic advantage. Liberty Star continued under escort. For Washington, the message had been delivered. Attacks on merchant shipping carry consequences. By sunrise, smoke over Puerto Cabello told the story. The shipyard lay in ruins. Cranes twisted like broken arms. Steel beams sagged in heaps. Missile tubes worth millions burned in blackened craters. Washington's assessment was blunt: $350 to $450 million in damage. Facilities that would take years to rebuild. And the bigger blow, Venezuela's coastal strike power was cut in half. Bastion launchers silent, radars gone. The gamble had failed. 7 Onyx missiles fired, nearly $20 million wasted. 11 American missiles worth $60 million hit their marks. The cost in lives deepened the loss. 32 workers killed, 88 wounded. Families woke to sirens and smoke. Hospitals overflowed. For Venezuelans, it was not only a military defeat, but a tragedy at home. Survivors spoke of colleagues trapped in collapsed workshops, of fires that raged too hot for rescue teams to enter. International shock came fast. Shipping insurers tripled premiums overnight. A single container vessel that once cost $500,000 to insure for the passage now demanded over $1.5 million. Tankers rerouted hundreds of miles east, adding weeks of delay. Some ships diverted south toward Guyana and Brazil, burning millions more in fuel. Markets trembled. Oil prices rose. Cargo firms scrambled to reassign fleets. Even Wall Street felt the tremor. Politically, isolation hardened. 20 nations condemned Caracas for striking a civilian ship. Washington released drone footage showing restraint, precision aimed at military assets, not civilians. The footage ran on every major network, framing America's strike as cold, calculated justice. By 7 a.m., the clash was over, but the consequences had only begun. Venezuela's largest shipyard was crippled, its credibility broken, and its naval strength cut in half. September 14, 2025. Dawn over the Caribbean. The horizon glowed gray, not from sunrise but from smoke. Hours earlier, Venezuela fired 7 supersonic missiles into a major trade corridor. None hit. The retaliation erased their shipyard, crippled defenses, and left families mourning. The numbers spoke clearly. $400 million in losses. 70% of production capacity destroyed. 32 dead, 88 wounded. America's tally: 11 missiles fired, 60 million spent, 0 casualties. The Liberty Star steamed on. Her deck scarred, her voyage continued. For her 28 civilian crew, survival was its message. They had stared at fire in the sky and lived to tell it. Beyond the battle, costs rippled outward. Insurance spiked. Shipping lanes detoured. Markets shook. For families near Carabobo, smoke replaced security. For global observers, the message was clear. Audacity without preparation ends in ruin. America's answer was more than firepower. It was economic, political, and psychological. It showed that discipline and preparation decide survival. Even allies of Caracas quietly backed away, unwilling to risk trade for a lost gamble. As the Liberty Star sailed east, the lesson was written in the sky. Nations that gamble with fire often burn alone. So here's the question. Was this a battle of strength or a lesson in restraint? Share your thoughts below. And before you go, remember this. The world's flashpoints grow every week. To follow them with fact-driven updates and urgent analysis, hit subscribe now, tap the bell, and stay ready for the next storm.